My sister told me I was worthless the day before my wedding. She said it in front of my entire family, and nobody stopped her. What I didn't know then was that her cruelty had been building for years. And the real reason behind it would destroy everything I thought I knew. I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones you've protected all along. Growing up, my sister Victoria was always the golden child. She was 3 years older, effortlessly beautiful, and naturally talented at everything she touched. I was the quiet one, the bookish middle child who preferred libraries to parties and homework to socializing. Our parents never hid their favoritism. Victoria got the best bedroom, the newest clothes, and all the attention at family dinners. I told myself it didn't matter. I convinced myself I preferred being invisible. But children always know when they're not loved equally, don't they? The comments started when I was 14, small things at first. Victoria would laugh at my clothes, my hair, the way I walked. She'd tell me I was too serious, too boring, too plain, to ever be interesting. At family gatherings, she'd introduce me as her unfortunate sister, and everyone would laugh like it was just harmless teasing. When I got into a prestigious university on a full scholarship, Victoria told me it was probably a diversity admission mistake. When I graduated summa cum laude, she said book smarts don't translate to real-world success. When I got my first job at a respected consulting firm, she laughed and said I'd probably be fired within 6 months for being too awkward. I stayed at that firm for 5 years and made partner. But here's what I didn't understand until much later. Every achievement I celebrated, every success I worked for, seemed to make Victoria angrier. The better I did, the crueler she became, and I couldn't figure out why my own sister would hate me for simply existing. Then I met Daniel. He was everything I didn't know I needed. Kind, patient, genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. He was a professor of literature, soft-spoken and thoughtful, and he made me feel seen for the first time in my life. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on a quiet beach. At sunset, just the two of us and the sound of waves. When I told my family, my mother's response was lukewarm. She said she was happy for me, but her eyes kept drifting to Victoria, as if checking for her approval before reacting. My father congratulated me with a pat on the shoulder and asked if Daniel had a stable income. Victoria's reaction was different. She went silent, her jaw tight. And then she asked to see a photo of him when I showed her. She stared at the screen for a long moment and said, "Interesting choice." I didn't know what she meant. I didn't ask. Maybe I should have. The wedding planning became a battlefield I never signed up for. My mother insisted Victoria be my maid of honor, even though I had closer friends who actually supported my relationship. Victoria agreed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and immediately started undermining every decision I made. She hated my dress, called my venue provincial, mocked my choice of flowers, and told me my color scheme was childish. When I pushed back, she'd sigh dramatically and say she was only trying to help me avoid embarrassing myself in front of Daniel's family. My mother always took a side. Victoria has better taste, dear. Maybe just listen to her. Daniel noticed the tension. He'd hold my hand after family dinners and ask gently if I was okay. I'd tell him I was fine, that this was just how my family operated, that Victoria had always been difficult. But he'd look at me with those concerned eyes and say, "Sarah, the way she talks to you isn't normal. It's not okay." I'd brush it off because acknowledging the truth felt like opening a door I'd kept locked my entire life. If I admitted my sister genuinely disliked me, I'd have to face the question I'd been avoiding since childhood. What was so wrong with me? The rehearsal dinner was held at my parents' house nights. Before the wedding, it was a small gathering, immediate family. And the wedding party, about 20 people total. Daniel's parents were gracious and warm. His mother brought me flowers. And his father kept telling jokes to ease the obvious tension. In the room, Victoria arrived late, dressed in white, a white cocktail dress. Form-fitting and elegant, the kind of thing you absolutely don't wear to someone else's wedding events. My mother said nothing. My father complimented her appearance. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table as if to say, I see it too. Dinner was awkward, but manageable until my father stood up. To give a toast, he talked about family, about tradition. About how proud he was to see me settling down. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. We honestly never thought Sarah would find someone she's always been. So different from Victoria, so difficult to understand. But Daniel, you seem like a patient man, and we're grateful. You're willing to take her on. The room went silent. Daniel's mother looked horrified. His father's smile disappeared. My best friend, who was sitting across from me, mouthed what the hell, with wide eyes. I felt something crack inside me, but I forced a smile and raised my glass. Daniel didn't raise his. He was staring at my father, with barely concealed anger, but before he could say anything, Victoria stood up. I'd like to say something, she announced, her voice bright and cheerful. Everyone turned to look at her, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I knew that tone. It was the one she used right before delivering a particularly cutting remark. Sarah has always been special, she began, and I could hear the venom disguised as affection. She's never quite fit in. Never quite understood how to be normal, as her older sister. I've watched her struggle her entire life to be something she's not. She paused, letting her words sink in. My mother was nodding along, as if this was a touching tribute. My father looked pleased. I've always told her she'd never amount to anything, not because I'm cruel, but because I wanted to prepare her for reality. The world isn't kind to people like Sarah, people who are awkward, who don't know how to read a room, who think being smart is a substitute for being likable. Daniel pushed his chair back. The sound scraped against the floor, like a warning, but Victoria kept going, her smile widening. So, Daniel, I have to ask you, man to man, what made you settle for my sister? Was it pity, convenience, or did you just give up on finding someone actually worth marrying? The silence that followed was suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. My sister had just publicly humiliated me at my own rehearsal dinner, and my parents were still smiling like she'd said something profound. Daniel stood up slowly, his face pale with fury. He looked at Victoria, then at my parents, then at me. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but absolutely steady. Sarah is the most remarkable person I've ever met. She's brilliant, kind, thoughtful, and more capable than anyone in this room gives her credit for. I didn't settle. I got incredibly lucky. He turned to my parents, and if you can't see that, if you've spent her entire life making her feel worthless, then you don't deserve to be at our wedding. My mother gasped. My father's face turned red. Victoria's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to shocked outrage. Daniel reached for my hand. We're leaving, now. I let him pull me up from my chair. I was numb, moving on autopilot, barely registering my mother's protests or Victoria's. Angry shouting, Daniel's parents followed us out immediately. And so did my best friend and 2 of the bridesmaids. We left my family sitting at that dinner table in stunned silence. And I didn't look back, but as we reached the door, I heard Victoria scream something that would haunt me for days. "You don't even know the truth about him. You don't know anything." What did she mean? What truth? I'd find out soon enough. And it would change everything I thought I understood about my family. We spent that night at Daniel's apartment in silence. He held me, while I cried, not saying anything, just being there. His parents had gone back to their hotel. My best friend, Rachel, texted me 17 times asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if she should come over. I didn't respond. I couldn't find the words. Around midnight, my phone started buzzing with calls from my mother. I ignored them, then texts started coming through. Not apologies. Not concern for how I was feeling, just anger. That I'd embarrassed the family by leaving, that Daniel had been disrespectful, that I'd overreacted to Victoria's joke. That word, joke, made something inside me finally snap. 28 years of cruel comments, public humiliation, and systematic belittling, and they still wanted to pretend it was all in good fun. Daniel was in the kitchen making tea when I made my decision. I walked in and said, "I want to cancel the wedding." He turned to look at me, and I expected hurt or disappointment. But instead he just looked sad. "Because of your family." "Because I can't do this. I can't start our marriage with this hanging over us. I can't subject you to them, and I can't." My voice broke. "I can't pretend anymore that I'm okay with how they treat me." Daniel set down the kettle and crossed the room to me. He took my face in his hands, gentle but firm, making me look at him. "Sarah, I don't want to cancel the wedding. I want to marry you. But I need you to understand something. You're not the problem here. You've never been the problem. Your family is toxic, and you've been conditioned your entire life to accept their abuse as normal." "It's not abuse," I said automatically, and he gave me a look so full of compassion and pain that I had to turn away. "Sarah, listen to yourself. Your sister just told a room full of people that you're worthless and asked your future husband why he settled for you. Your parents laughed. If that's not abuse, what is?" I sank into a chair, and that's when I finally let myself feel the full weight of what had happened, not just tonight, but everything. Every casual insult, every dismissive comment, every time my achievements were minimized or my feelings were invalidated, every time I was told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too unable to take a joke. "I don't want them at the wedding," I whispered, "any of them." Daniel knelt beside me. "Then we don't invite them, we get married. With the people who actually love and support us. My parents adore you. Rachel would walk through fire for you. We'll have a small ceremony. Intimate and beautiful, without anyone who makes you feel small. My mother will never forgive me," I said. And even as I said it, I hated how much I still cared about her approval. "Then she doesn't deserve your forgiveness either." We decided to move forward with the wedding but to uninvite my family. Daniel offered to make the calls, but I knew I had to do it myself. It was the first time I'd ever stood up to them, and I needed to do it on my own terms. The next morning, I called my mother first. She answered immediately, her voice sharp with irritation. "It's about time you called. Victoria is devastated. You embarrassed her in front of everyone. And your father and I are extremely disappointed in your behavior." I took a breath. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out. Steady. "Mum, I'm calling to tell you that you, Dad, and Victoria are no longer invited to my wedding. I've spent my entire life being told I'm not good enough, and I'm done accepting that treatment. I don't want you there." The silence on the other end was deafening, then she laughed. A brittle, disbelieving sound. "You can't be serious, we're your parents. You can't get married without us, what will people think?" "I don't care what people think, I care about being surrounded by people who actually love me, and that's not you." "Sarah, you're being ridiculous," Victoria was just trying to give a heartfelt speech. "You're a sensitive, you always have been. If you do this, if you exclude your own family from your wedding, you'll regret it forever." "The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. Goodbye, Mum." I hung up before she could respond. My whole body was trembling. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years, relief. I didn't call Victoria. I didn't owe her the courtesy of a conversation. I sent her a text instead, short and direct. "You're not invited to my wedding. Don't contact me again." Then I blocked her number. What I didn't expect was what came next. Within hours, my phone started blowing up with messages from extended family members. Distant cousins and aunts I barely knew. They all said the same thing. I was being cruel, ungrateful, selfish. How could I do this to my poor mother and sister? Didn't I know how much I was hurting them? Not one person asked how I was doing or what had happened. To make me take such a drastic step, the narrative Victoria and my parents were spinning was already set, and I was the villain. But then, 3 days before the wedding, I got a call from my Aunt Linda. Linda was my father's older sister, and we'd never been particularly close. She lived across the country and rarely came to family gatherings. When I saw her name on my phone, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Hello." "Sarah, it's Linda. I heard what happened, and I need to talk to you. Can we meet? It's important." Her tone was urgent but not angry, which immediately set her apart from everyone else who'd contacted me. "I'm really busy with wedding preparations," I said carefully. "Can we talk on the phone?" "No, this needs to be in person. Please, Sarah, there are things you need to know about your family, about Victoria, things that explain why she is the way she is." That got my attention. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near Daniel's apartment the next morning. I didn't tell Daniel where I was going. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was afraid he'd try to protect me from whatever Linda was about to reveal. Linda was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair more grey than brown, but her eyes were sharp and kind. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I know this must be confusing. I promise I'll explain everything." I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, needing something to hold on to. "What's this about?" Linda took a deep breath. "Sarah, your parents have been lying to you your entire life. So has Victoria. And I've kept quiet because your father asked me to, but after what happened at your rehearsal dinner, I can't stay silent anymore." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Victoria isn't your biological sister. She's your half-sister. Your father had an affair early in his marriage to your mother, and Victoria was the result. The other woman didn't want to raise a child, so your mother agreed to take Victoria in and raise her as her own, but she never forgave your father, and she never truly accepted Victoria." I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "That doesn't make sense. My mother adores Victoria. She's always favoured her." Linda shook her head. "That's what they wanted you to think. But the truth is more complicated. Your mother overcompensated, publicly showering Victoria with attention and gifts, but behind Closed doors, she was cold to her, critical, emotionally distant. She made Victoria feel like she had to constantly prove she deserved to be part of the family. Then why does Victoria hate me? What did I do? You didn't do anything, Sarah. You were born. You were your mother's biological child, proof that the family could move on from the affair. And even though your mother didn't show it, even though she treated you with the same cold distance she showed Victoria, Victoria saw you as the child your mother actually wanted, the legitimate one. The one who belonged. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me, everything I thought I knew about my family, about my childhood, was suddenly wrong. But if my mother didn't want either of us, why did it seem like she loved Victoria more? Because Victoria learned how to perform, she became exactly what your mother wanted, or at least what she thought your mother wanted. Beautiful, charming, social, but it was all a mask, Sarah. Victoria has spent her entire life desperate for validation she never get, and she's taken that pain out on you because you represent everything she can never be. That's not fair. I never asked to be born into this mess. No, you didn't, and that's exactly why I'm telling you this now. You deserve to understand that none of this is your fault. The cruelty, the favoritism, the constant criticism, it was never about who you were. It was about their dysfunction, their unresolved pain, and their inability to be honest about any of it. I felt tears streaming down my face, and I didn't bother wiping them away. Does Victoria know about her mother, about the affair? She found out when she was 16. She overheard your parents arguing about it. That's when she changed. That's when the cruelty toward you really intensified. Before that, she was just competitive. After, it became something darker. She needed you to be less than her. Needed you to fail, because if you succeeded, it meant she was expendable. Do you understand? Your achievements threatened her entire identity. I thought about every accomplishment I'd ever had, every moment Victoria had tried to diminish or destroy. My graduation, my job, my engagement. She hadn't been jealous. She'd been terrified. There's more, Linda said quietly, something about Daniel. My heart stopped. What about Daniel? Victoria dated him first, about 5 years ago, before you met him. It was brief, only a few months, and it ended badly. He broke up with her because he said she was manipulative and emotionally abusive. She's never forgiven him. When you started dating him, when you got engaged, it wasn't just about you having something she didn't. It was about you having the one man who ever rejected her. I couldn't breathe. Daniel had never mentioned dating Victoria. He'd never said a word. Did he know when we met? Did he know she was my sister? Not at first. They used different last names. Victoria used her middle name. When they dated, for some reason, he didn't make the connection until you introduced him to your family. By then, he was already in love with you. He came to me, actually, to ask what he should do. I told him to tell you the truth, but he was afraid it would hurt you. That you'd think he was using you to get back at Victoria or something. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to think. I have to go. Sarah, wait. I know this is a lot, but you needed to know. You've been carrying the weight of their dysfunction your entire life. And it was never yours to carry. I left the coffee shop in a daze. My mind was racing, trying to reconcile everything Linda had told me with everything I'd believed. Victoria wasn't my full sister. My mother had never really wanted her. Daniel had dated Victoria before me and never told me. I drove back to the apartment and found Daniel grading papers. At the kitchen table, he looked up when I walked in, and his smile immediately faded. What's wrong? You dated Victoria. It wasn't a question. The color drained from his face. He set down his pen slowly. Carefully, like he was buying time. Yes, I did, a long time ago. Why didn't you tell me? He ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Because I knew how it would look. I knew you'd wonder if I was with you to hurt her, or if I was comparing you to her, or if my feelings for you were somehow connected to her. And Sarah, none of that is true. I fell in love with you completely separately, completely independent of anything to do with Victoria. But you knew who she was, and you didn't say anything. I didn't know at first. She used a different name when we dated. We met online and it was so brief. When I finally realized she was your sister, we'd already been together for over a year. I was terrified that telling you would ruin everything. I talked to your Aunt Linda because I didn't know what to do, and she said I should tell you, but by then the wedding was planned and I kept thinking the right moment would come, and it never did. I sank onto the couch, my whole body heavy with exhaustion. What was she like when you dated? Daniel sat down beside me, but didn't touch me. She was charming. At first, vivacious, fun, exciting. But underneath that, she was deeply insecure and controlling. She needed constant validation, constant attention. If I spent time with friends or focused on work, she'd accuse me of not caring about her. She'd manipulate situations to make herself the victim. It was exhausting, and I ended it. After 3 months, she didn't take it well. She called me for weeks, showed up at my office, sent long emails about how I'd ruined her life. Eventually, she moved on, or at least I thought she had. And then you met me, and I was her sister, and you didn't think I deserved to know any of this. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if you knew, it would poison how you saw our relationship. And honestly, Sarah, I was afraid you'd walk away. I was afraid you'd think I pursued you because of some unfinished business with Victoria, and that couldn't be further from the truth. You're nothing like her. You're kind, genuine, thoughtful. Being with you is the easiest thing I've ever done. Being with her was like walking through a minefield every day. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that his feelings for me were real and separate from whatever history he had with Victoria. But the betrayal of not being told stung deeply. I need time to think, I said quietly. I need to process all of this. The wedding is in 2 days, Daniel said, and there was fear in his voice. Sarah, please tell me this doesn't change how you feel about marrying me. I don't know, I admitted. I don't know anything anymore. I spent that night at Rachel's apartment. She didn't ask questions. Just made up the guest room and brought me tea and sat with me while I cried. Around midnight, after I'd told her everything, she said something that cut through all the noise in my head. Sarah, you've spent your entire life being told you're not enough. Not pretty enough, not charming enough, not worthy of love. And now you've found someone who loves you completely, who stood up for you when no one else would, and you're looking for reasons to push him away. You're sabotaging your own happiness because deep down, you still believe what Victoria told you, that you don't deserve this. That's not true, I protested, but even as I said it, I knew she was right. Daniel should have told you about Victoria. Yes, that was wrong. But he told you why he didn't, and it makes sense. He was scared. He thought he'd lose you. Can you honestly say you wouldn't have doubted him if he told you early on that he dated your sister? Would you have believed that his feelings for you were genuine? I thought about it. Really thought about it, and I had to admit that no, I probably wouldn't have. I would have spent the entire relationship comparing myself to Victoria, wondering if Daniel secretly wished I was more like her, more beautiful, more charismatic. The question you need to ask yourself, Rachel continued, is whether you trust him now, not whether you trust the decision he made 2 years ago, but whether you trust the man he is today, the man who defended you at that dinner, who's planning to marry you in 2 days, do you? I closed my eyes and thought about Daniel, the way he looked at me, the way he listened when I talked, the way he'd never once made me feel like I was less than enough. I thought about how he'd stood up to my family when no one else ever had, how he'd been willing to disinvite his own parents if it meant protecting me. Yes, I whispered, I trust him. I went back to Daniel's apartment early the next morning. He was awake, sitting on the couch in the same clothes from the day before, looking like he hadn't slept at all. When he saw me, he stood up. Immediately, his expression a mix of hope and fear. I'm still angry that you didn't tell me, I said before he could speak. I wish you'd trusted me with the truth from the beginning, but I understand why you didn't, and I believe you when you say your feelings for me have nothing to do with Victoria. He took a cautious step toward me. Sarah, I am so sorry. If I could go back and do it differently, I would tell you everything from the start and trust that you'd see the truth. I've been terrified every day that you'd find out and think I was lying about loving you, because loving you is the truest thing I've ever felt. I crossed the room and took his hands. I still want to marry you tomorrow, with just the people who actually care about us. No family drama, no toxic relationships, just us and the people we love. Daniel pulled me into his arms, and I felt him shaking. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for trusting me. I promise I will never keep anything from you again. No more secrets, no more protecting you from truths you have a right to know. Our wedding was small and perfect, just 20 people, held in a garden overlooking the ocean. Daniel's parents cried happy tears. Rachel gave a beautiful speech about chosen family, and when Daniel and I exchanged vows, there was no one there who made me feel small or unworthy or less than. I thought that would be the end of it, that I'd cut ties with my family and move forward with my new life, free from their toxicity. But 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail from Victoria. It wasn't an apology, it was 10 pages of handwritten rage, blaming me for ruining her relationship with our parents, accusing me of stealing Daniel from her, calling me selfish and ungrateful and cruel. She said I'd always been jealous of her, that I'd spent my whole life trying to take what was hers, that I was a manipulative liar who turned everyone against her. At the end of the letter, she wrote something that made me realize she'd never actually cared about me at all. She wrote, I wish you'd never been born. My life would have been so much better. If you didn't exist, you took everything from me, and I hope one day you understand what it feels like to lose everything. I showed the letter to Daniel. He wanted to get a restraining order, but I told him no. I didn't want to give Victoria any more power over my life. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I wrote her back, not a long letter, not an emotional outpouring, just a few simple lines. Victoria, I'm sorry our parents failed you. I'm sorry you grew up feeling like you had to compete for love. But I can't fix that, and I won't or yours. I hope you find peace, but I can't be part of your life anymore. Goodbye. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. Aunt Linda called me a few weeks later to tell me that Victoria had moved to another state and cut off contact with our parents. Apparently, after I disinvited them from the wedding, Victoria had a breakdown. She confronted our mother about the affair, about the years of emotional manipulation, about the way she'd been used as a pawn in their dysfunctional marriage. My mother, according to Linda, denied everything and blamed Victoria for being ungrateful. Victoria packed her things that night and left. She hasn't spoken to them since. My parents tried to reach out to me after that. My mother called, crying, saying the family was falling apart, and it was all my fault. My father sent an email saying I owed them an apology for the disrespect I'd shown. I didn't respond to either of them. It's been a year now. Daniel and I are happy. We bought a small house with a garden, and we're talking about starting a family. His parents have become the family I always wished I had, warm and supportive, and genuinely interested in my life. Rachel is going to be godmother. Whenever we have children, we're planning a trip to Europe next summer. I still think about Victoria sometimes. I wonder if she's found the peace she was looking for, if she's gotten therapy, if she's learned to separate her worth from our parents' broken expectations. Part of me hopes she has. Part of me will always care about her, despite everything, because we were both victims of the same dysfunctional system. But I also know that I made the right choice. Walking away wasn't cruelty, it was self-preservation. It was choosing my own mental health and happiness over a family that never saw my value. Sometimes I catch myself apologizing unnecessarily or downplaying my achievements, and I realize those are habits I learned growing up. Defense mechanisms I developed to protect myself from Victoria's cruelty and my parents' indifference. I'm working on unlearning them. It's not easy, but Daniel helps. He calls me out when I minimize myself, reminds me of my worth, celebrates my successes without qualification or comparison. If there's anything I've learned from all of this, it's that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, support, and genuine love. And sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to give you those things, even if they're related to you. I don't regret cutting ties with my parents and Victoria. I don't regret the wedding we had, small and intimate with only people who truly cared about us, and I don't regret standing up for myself, finally, after 28 years of accepting treatment I never deserved. The consequences of that decision rippled through my family in ways I couldn't have predicted, but I can't take responsibility for their dysfunction. I can only take responsibility for my own healing. And maybe that's the real lesson here. You can't fix broken people. You can't make your parents love you the way you need to be loved. You can't change someone who's determined to see you as the enemy. All you can do is protect yourself, build a life with people who actually value you and refuse to accept cruelty disguised as love. So here I am, a year later, happier than I've ever been, surrounded by chosen family who sees me clearly and loves me anyway. And if my biological family can't be happy for me, can't celebrate my joy, can't put aside their own issues long enough to treat me with basic decency, then they don't deserve a place in my life. It's as simple and as complicated as that. Have you ever had to walk away from people who should love you?